Thunderbirds first aired in 1965 and went on for 32 episodes over 2 seasons. Well, season 2 was cancelled after 6 episodes, so you better call it 1 and a bit seasons. Despite its short length, it gained a pretty loyal fanbase over the decades, spanning multiple generations. Fast forward 50 years to 2015 and we have essentially a remake of Thunderbirds called Thunderbirds Are Go. That went on for 78 episodes over 3 seasons, so a bit longer than the original. Now usually, like more times than not, remakes are inferior to the original. That being said, I want to give Thunderbirds Are Go its fair shake. So in this video I want to compare the original and the remake, look at the differences and see which one did what better. The original had a feeling of optimism. Despite it being set 100 years after it was made, a lot of what was depicted reflected the 1960s. Jeff Tracy reminisces on being one of the first men on the moon. Remember, this was 1965, so they haven't landed on the moon just yet, but they were well on the way to doing so. The Fireflash was the fastest passenger airline ever made, supposed to go 6 times the speed of sound, with passenger airlines really taking off in the 1950s, and atomic power becoming more prevalent in technology. It felt like a very 60s vision of the future, but I mean that in the best possible way. It has futuristic 60s technology, and also that 60s optimism, like we're on the cutting edge and we're turning a page technologically. And it's that attitude and philosophy that's behind International Rescue and Jeff Tracy. He's a billionaire. He could be living it up or buying a social media company and tanking it to the ground. I mean, yes, he does have his own private island, very much a billionaire thing to do, but he's done that in order to help people and do some good. And by extension, so are his sons Scott, Virgil, Alan, Gordon and John. And something I didn't really notice as a kid, but I appreciated later when watching this. There was a deep sense of respect given to the Thunderbird machines. Jeff said that despite them being used for good, in the wrong hands, they could be dangerous.
Our equipment is way ahead of its time. In the wrong hands, it could be utilized to destroy life.
Which is completely true. Thunderbird 1's top speed is nearly 20 times the speed of sound. If you fly that into a densely populated area, you would severely lower the property value. The Thunderbirds aren't taken out for a joyride every other episode. I mean, if you're a paramedic, you wouldn't take an ambulance out just for a spin around the block. If they did do that, I feel it may have cheapened the time we saw them on screen. That means when we did see them, we knew it was for a really good reason, which added to the weight of the launches we saw on screen. On paper, seeing pretty much the same launch sequences in nearly every episode would get boring, but somehow it doesn't. Speaking from my experience as a former child, we were particularly fascinated with infrastructure, machinery and big vehicles. Well, that's why so many kids shows have that as a basis. Bob the Builder, Thomas the Tank Engine, Transformers, it's almost a subgenre in and of itself. And either that fascination stays with us into adulthood, or we're really just big kids at heart. Take your pick. Seeing the pool slide away, or the palm trees fall back as the cliff face slides down, it triggers that part of our brain, it tickles that itch. I go back to the point about the danger. A series running weekly with the status quo to uphold runs the risk of the danger not feeling convincing. That's why in Star Trek, whenever the crew of the Enterprise beamed down, it was always the red shirts getting offed. And it happened so often it soon after became a meme. But that leads me to the most memorable moment I think there is in the show. In the episode Terror in New York City, Thunderbirds 1 and 2 are on the way back to Tracy Island after a rescue. Virgil makes a course correction, which alerts a naval vessel that they're in a direct path to New York. Unable to determine what it is, they launch missiles at it. Virgil uses countermeasures, so surely he's going to escape, right? He's hit and he's going down, with a naval vessel going to fire some more missiles to finish him off. Scott is in Thunderbird 1 trying to get to him as fast as he can, Jeffrey's trying to contact whoever he can to make them stop attacking, and Virgil's trying to get flight control back. Luckily the message gets through and they destroy the missiles, but not before Thunderbird 2 is hurtling towards the ground. Virgil gets a nose up and manages to crash land. The whole scene was tense, the lack of music, the quick editing, and the sound effect it made when Thunderbird 2 hit the ground. As a kid, it was shocking. The Thunderbirds in the show were almost like characters themselves, so seeing Thunderbird 2 be battered to such an extent, let's just say, I never expected that.
We order each component from different aircraft corporations. None of them know what they're making. It's only when they all arrive here that the jigsaw fits together.
Well, glad to know that International Rescue is run the same way as Walter White's criminal enterprise.
And don't buy everything in one place. Different items, different stores. Attracts less attention.
I guess I worry too much.
I know the whole puppet setup can put people off at first, and I get that. especially with today's audience. But once you got past that, it can still be a really enjoyable show for kids today. And now let's have a look at Thunderbirds Are Go. I'll be honest, I was expecting this to be a cheap cash grab capitalising off the recognisable name of Thunderbirds. But in my opinion, this show really wasn't. There are a few changes made to the setup. Instead of Jeff Tracy running international rescue, he is instead missing, presumed dead. There's a recurring theme of the Tracy sons throughout the series, of them acting in their father's shadow and continuing his legacy. Them constantly questioning what would their father do. Most of the Thunderbirds remain unchanged. Thunderbird 1 is still the hypersonic blue aircraft, Thunderbird 3 is still the red spacecraft, Thunderbird 4 is still the yellow submarine. But the biggest change will be to Thunderbird 5. It still has a round section connected to another longer section, but this design accounts for the low gravity by having the round section rotate, using centrifugal force as an artificial gravity, similar to how they did in 2001 A Space Odyssey. Another big change comes with John Tracy. In the original, Jerry Anderson resented the model for John Tracy to the point that he had him stay on Thunderbird 5, so he would receive the distress call at the start of the episode and never be seen again till the next one. In Thunderbirds Are Go, he had more of an actual character. He came across as more introspective, more recluse, and overall more mature than the other Tracy brothers. The episode EOS is a really good showcase of his character. The recently sentient AI on board Thunderbird 5 is wreaking havoc, and John has to think quickly to stop it.
I'm afraid I can't let you do that, John.
He could have tried to destroy EOS, but manages to talk her down, not only showing off John's smarts and compassion, but also acting as a message to kids that sometimes the best way to resolve an issue is with their words, and not through force or violence. You also have the addition of Thunderbird Shadow, something else to help differ it from the original. That's piloted by Ko. This series is Tintin, but this time also fleshing out her character even more. The weekly rescues are pretty much the same sort of stuff. The rescues are tense and well done, however this one has the advantage of technology. This series could have easily been 100% CGI, however they decide to make it a mixture. A lot of the sets and environments are practical models, which make them look pretty good. The characters and vehicles are CGI, which allows them better mobility. A disadvantage the puppets had were the restrictive movements, especially with walking. In Jerry Anderson's Super Mario Nation productions, the walking just did not look convincing, so oftentimes to work around this, they filmed them from the waist up, had smaller transport vehicles, or filmed from a character's point of view, which they did more when filming Captain Scarlet. But with the new CGI models, they can walk, run and jump. What was such a big hurdle and a big issue in the original was effortlessly done in the remake. That same comparison, dare I say, doesn't transfer to the vehicles. Great care was taken by the team when filming the models. A deeper depth of field and a higher frame rate were used to help sell it visually that these were large vehicles and these large pieces of machinery. And that's something I feel the original did better. When comparing Thunderbird 2's launch sequence, you see it lower over the selected pod. It's moving slowly like a large piece of machinery would do. To compare that with the launch in the new one, it's very quick and it looks very light. When the pods slide by and come to a quick stop, you don't see them react. Assuming the payload per pod is around 100 tons. For reference, that's about the weight of a blue whale or a Boeing 757-200. You should see some jostling or some resistance when it comes to a stop that quickly, but you don't. In real life, when you see a 757 or any other plane for that matter, you see them taxi slowly before coming to a complete stop. And when Thunderbird 2 lowers, you have the same thing again. A working machine weighing hundreds of tons will need to be lowered slowly to prevent damage. I know it might seem like nitpicking here, but it's these small things that help sell the realism. And to New One's credit, during Thunderbird 4's deployment, you do see Thunderbird 2 react when the pod is dropped into the water, something the original also did. In the episode Earthbreaker, it had a similar scene to the original's Terror in New York, where Thunderbird 2 crashed at Tracy Island. Again, the same criticism can be put there. The original's was far more tense and felt way more realistic. So visually, with the vehicles, I feel the original tops it. And when I say realistic, I don't mean it's indistinguishable from real life, no, certainly not. And realism isn't and should never be used as a metric for quality, but in terms of selling the danger, it definitely does help. Overall, I have to say that the original is better than the new one. That being said, the remake is in no way bad, it is good in its own right. It improves on some of the weaknesses the original had, while taking some bold steps to do its own thing. And watching it, you can tell it was made with love. Sylvia Anderson, who was the co-creator of the original and the voice actress for Lady Penelope, had a guest role, and David Graham, who voiced Parker in the original, reprised that role in the remake. Whether or not you agree with me that the original is better, I'm sure we can all agree that they're both better than the 2004 film. Hey, what do you think? Do you think the original's better? Do you think the remake is better? Or do you think the 2004 film is actually underrated? Please let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and we'll see you later.